Let's start with some international news. The United Nations says it's received reports that Libyan guards shot at migrants as they try to flee from airstrikes that hit a detention center for refugees near the capital of Tripoli Tuesday. That's according to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. At least 53 people, including children, are confirmed dead from the attack.
Well, the United Nations Security Council last night failed to agree on a statement even after an emergency meeting behind closed doors. We were reporting on that. Several diplomats blamed the United States for blocking the statement. Earlier, the UN Secretary General called for an independent probe into the circumstances surrounding that attack.
This is the government-run migrant center, overflowing with Africans who use Libya as a transit point in their efforts at reaching Europe. This satellite image shows the center before and after it was hit. In New York, the Council was unable to agree to a statement due to objections by the United States.
We fully agree on this statement. Several delegations also quoted the Secretary General's strong condemnation of the issue and also his demand for an investigation and accountability. Several.
Earlier, condemnation from the UN chief.
The Secretary General is outraged by reports that at least 44 migrants and refugees, including women and children, have been killed and more than 130 injured following airstrikes at the Tajura migrant detention center east of Tripoli. He condemns this horrendous incident in the strongest terms, and he expresses his deepest condolences to the families of the victims and wishes a quick recovery to those injured.
The attack has resulted in the highest publicly reported death toll since Eastern forces under Commander Khalifa Haftar launched a surprise offensive against the UN-backed government of National Accord in Tripoli.
The Secretary General calls for an independent investigation of the circumstances of this incident to ensure that the perpetrators are brought to justice. It is important to note that the United Nations had provided exact coordinates of the detention center to the parties. The Secretary General further reminds all parties of their obligations under international humanitarian law to take all feasible precautions to avoid and in any event to minimize incidental loss of civilian life, injuries to civilians, and damage to civilian objects, and also to refrain from directing attacks against civilians.
Human Rights Watch has called for the immediate release of the migrants who are held in dire circumstances.
The migrants who've been in that detention center and are in other detention centers are like sitting ducks, and they've been that way for a long time. The UN has been warning that exactly something like this could happen, and it did. What we need to do now is for the Security Council to back the UN agency's calls to release the detainees, the migrants, to evacuate them to safe places, let them go. We need to stop also the forcible returns of migrants who are rescued at sea to Libya. Libya is not a safe place. The European Union, the UN, everyone needs to work together to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Several UN officials have said the attack may, depending on the precise circumstances, amount to a war crime because the coordinates of the center's location had been shared with all the warring parties. Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.